Hello, loves, and welcome to another episode of Origin Story Podcast. We're all here. We've all made it to whatever point in time that we're in. Hard to say. It's during Pisces season. It's about to be eclipse. It's eclipse season, I think, actually, officially. Uh, there's a lot of really swirly, interesting energy in the air, and it's so important now more than ever to anchor ourselves in and remember that while the storm swirls around, that we are the eye, that we are our own home, wherever we go, wherever we are. And that whole idea of how do you come home to yourself? Like once you've been on the journey, once you've been in the midst of the chaos, how do you come into that homeostasis, how do you come into that with yourself and then maintain it after being on such a deep journey? Because usually, and this is, the process of the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, usually once we do come back from some sort of awakening, some sort of adventure, mythological adventure of ourselves in the world, there's not a manual for how to keep doing life and to do it in a new way. You've built new neural pathways based on what you've just excavated and alchemized. And like, how do you continue forward with that? And how do you read the energies? And how do you give yourself permission to move forward boldly and lovingly? I think that's what we're going to speak to today. And this whole concept of returning home. The heroes and heroines return home. What happens then? We kind of touched on this in our Kairos and Chaos episode. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, it might be a nice one to start with and then come back here. Or don't start here and go back there. It doesn't really matter. It can be as beautiful and messy and linear or non-linear as you want it to be, which is kind of the whole point. Choose your own adventure. But yeah, so I guess the first place to really begin is what is home? Because it's so important on this path to always get really clear on how you're defining, where you're possibly limiting your definition of any concept, and where you have the capacity to expand it. So, Jess, I'd love to hear how you define home for us to dive in today.
Hmm, I love that. Yeah, it's really beautiful. The What's kind of dropping in actually was it I think this leads on so perfectly also from our last episode where we were talking about the this year of the snake and the snake being very much that like the rebirth and the shedding energy. And this is sort of what comes next there. What comes next? Where how do we walk forwards in life then from that point of being so deeply changed as like this year is going to deeply every year is deeply changing us, but we know that this year is a peak point of transformation for humanity. So finding that place, as you put it so beautifully, right, the eye of the storm, finding that centered place, that place of home, to be able to navigate that going forwards feels really important for this year and for probably quite some years to come. Um, and the way that was dropping in there was like in this rebirth, like the lead up to it is what we get mulched, we conceive, we go on the journey, everything's being transformed, prepared, grown, everything has to shift, identities and all of the pieces. And then comes the giving birth to self, to the new experience of life. And the way that was dropping in there was really like it's time to mother, to to build, to nurture, and to feel like this, just archetypally, energetically, this is kind of like what I'm feeling and seeing, is like this is home, is the period of like building the home. We've like gone off on the magical journey, and then it's like, okay, how do we mother or a parent or nurture the new self into being, and learning new rules and learning new ways of playing the game, but it's within like a safe sanctuary, right? New baby comes into the world. It is with parents, guardians, beings, adults, hopefully, that are looking after this, this little baby, little Bubba. And we are all of those parts, right? A lot of us have gone off on the journey and then had to discover the parent within, the mothering within, the fathering within, the structures, the boundaries, and all of that. We had to go on our own journey, and now we give birth to the new version of self that comes in. And that safety net is the parts of us that have come together, and now they're working together as family, as a unit within ourselves, to create a whole completely different experience of life, right? When you have a child, it's going to change everything. Nothing is ever going to be the same again. And there's a hallmark of that is selflessness, that is like giving out when we've done the internal journey. And we it gets mentioned a lot, right? That like there's a really deeply important part of the spiritual journey and the awakening journey that is the spiritual narcissism and the incredible self-centeredness that is actually required to find the center of the self and to come into that. And then there's the return. There's the return into life, back into the community. This follows the structure of like the vision quest. You extricate from community, you go out, you receive the insight, you come back, and you bring that to give that to the community again, and to integrate all of that. So when we come out of that spiritual narcissism phase and we return home. We return home with all of these parts, ideally in congruence and with the capacity to nurture, to grow, to build a new life, to build sanctuary, to build ways of showing up and serving outside of just ourselves, right? And hopefully, the way what we would have found along the way I would probably define home in that is knowing the core self, knowing the true self. Can we ever really know all of it? No, but enough to have a grounding in, this is how I move in the world. So we can go in and out of that and go and explore and have new adventures, but now we know where we come back to. There's like a beautiful middle spot, sweet spot right in the center that usually feels like what we were always looking for, right? We've gone and collected those pieces, or like the self-worth, the self-knowledge, the feeling loved, feeling connected, feeling fulfilled, all of those pieces that we went looking for on the journey. We come back with that, with the capacity then to overflow that. So if we can stay in that sense of, I know how to have an overflowing cup that allows me to nurture and support then not just myself. I'm in my sanctuary, I'm in my home that I've built, and I can nurture and support and give and open that to other people, to welcome them in, and just keep overflowing into service, into love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, I love I loved your answer because I felt like it was unexpected. I don't know. I would have like, and I love that in a beautiful way because it's just like, right. Oh, that's not how I would have answered the question, but it also is literally almost the exact same thing that I would say, just in your own way. And I love that because it's like you being at home in yourself, in your answer, and knowing what home feels like in your body and speaking to that truth and sharing it. And I just love that. And that's like always so refreshing when I feel like I have not only these conversations, because it's always that way. It's always that way with us, but like I love that when I interact with people who know themselves, because there is a sense of home. Oh, it's a kindred spirit. It's somebody who I can connect with and helps me see the world and expand my definition because they're so safe in themselves and I'm so safe in myself that like we can come together and create something new. And how beautiful is that? So I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I love how you described it as like the family, the internal family coming together, and and ultimately it's like it's that beautiful balance, that weave for me, like when it comes to what is home, like a feeling safe, right? And on an energetic level, right? Knowing the core self. I fully, fully agree. If we can know our core essence, there is and accept it and make peace with it and also celebrate it, then there's a level of peace and ease that enters the body. And that's how, for me, I feel at home. I feel at home in my body when I feel that level of surrendered grace and ease in my physicality. And it usually lands in my heart or in my gut or my like root, you know, or some combination of like a figure eight of the three. So it's like, and I've been on such a journey of home. Like I know everybody is, but it has felt extra prominent in my life. Maybe that's because the first film I ever really watched and was obsessed with was The Wizard of Oz, which is There's No Place Like Home. Maybe that was like, you know, feeding, heads up, little baby Hannah, this will be the theme of your life. Just heads up, it's coming. Maybe it influenced me. I don't know. Maybe it's because my Chiron is in Cancer. I'm not sure. But like, it's been a huge theme. And last year was 2024 was such a year for me to finally get clear on feeling home in my system. And it happened on a very literal level. I had the call from Spirit to travel, to leave Bali, to go on a quest to Avalon again with a sister who invited me. And I was like, great. And before that, I went to the US. Wasn't sure why I was going back to the US. I was like, oh, it's a little messy over there energetically. I don't really want to go there. But I have family and beloveds, and it was really important on my origin story reboot, which is what I call it, which might be an interesting topic for another day. That's still connected to the hero and heroine's journey, but it's like an opportunity to go and regrid the lands that I had been born on and lived on growing up, infusing it with my new energy and then reclaiming those lands in a new way. Um, Essentially, though, I was nomadic for almost 7 months um, during 2024. And as a result of that, I ended up moving 26 times in the span of about 6 months, which is absolutely insane. Um, I was really purely nomadic and it was an adventure and I like didn't know where home was going to be, like sometimes like a day out, and I was like navigating what that looked like, but I was listening to the call of spirit and I was like, I know I'm supposed to be here. And so the reality for me was I had had this definition of home prior to last year where I'm like, home needs to look a certain way. Home needs to feel this way. It needs to have this level of abundance and this level of luxury and ease and niceness and art, and it needs to be this. And if it's not this, then I can't get any work done because I don't feel at home in myself to create or feel at ease or peace in my body. Well, that's bullshit because love you, Hannah, from most of your life, but that is incorrect because last year what I learned was how to find home in my body because I was moving so much and living in other people's spaces, whether I was staying in like hotels or hostels or doing pet sitting or staying with family or friends, like whatever it was, because it was all of those things. I did all of those things. Um, I uh I had to find a way to feel at home in my energy body regardless. And I didn't have access to my things. I was living out of two suitcases and it wasn't an ideal situation for me because I know I'm I love people and I love going out into the community with the people who are my people. I'm actually incredibly introverted and I really love being at home. I'm such a homebody. And so me being shook to my core in terms of how I defined home and what I experienced of home required me to become masterful at feeling at home in myself. And I really learned to live without for so much. Like, what is actually necessity? What is actually necessary for me to feel at home? And there might be a few items, there might be a few things like I need it to be clean. I need it to actually be in a safe place. Like, I need, like, access to hot water. Like, well, even that I learned I don't really need. But in England in summertime or anytime, yes. But, yeah, this whole idea of home, though, it required me to deeply surrender to the chaos of the world around me, to feel empowered in that, and to feel empowered that I could hold my own frame, my own center, my own feelings of balance. Where were my foundations as well? My foundations I found in that process were not just in my capacity to resource myself and realize that I'm actually a fucking badass and can like magnetize miracles and take care of myself in pretty, I would say, like extreme nomadic circumstances. It's like not extreme. It could be more extreme, but we're not calling that in anyways. But like in pretty like, severe, there's a better word, severe nomadic circumstances, I can take care of myself. But I also, oh gosh, I've lost my train of thought now. Oh no. Well, I can't hold my center now in this conversation. So maybe it's
It
well,
was
whoops, there we are.
it's okay. It's beautiful. You spoke to something really important there. I've experienced this as well with, and I see it with a lot of
Mm.
other people as well, that they don't necessarily take into account how much when we're moving around, especially in other people's spaces, that the energy body can be so impacted. And we don't always necessarily realize the vibrational impact of like moving around a lot and being in, like, yeah, there's like human organizational stuff, but also just vibrationally, like consistently moving and being in other people's energy that they've settled into a space and things like that. And I love what you're speaking to there, where it's like it really is about like, how do I hold my own energy in the world? What is needed for that, no matter where I am? Because home is just, like you said, it's like it needs to be in our body, right? It needs to be held by us, and our energy gets to create that wherever we are, really. And it's not necessarily about the physical things that we have with us or what we need or what we think we require in those circumstances. It's like, how much of my energy can I bring in to this situation so that I feel me? I'm in my containment, right? And I think a lot of the the spiritual awakening journey is about going and figuring out, like, how do I stop being buffeted around like a leaf in the wind in the world? And this is like sovereignty work, right? It's like, how do I keep my essence, stay filled with myself, so that when we go into, someone else's home, or we're staying in a hostel, or like wherever it is, wherever we may find ourselves, that we are not immediately having to adapt ourselves to the environment, whatever it is. Like, I think people know, like, if you go and stay with someone in their home, and of course there's like a little sense of like, oh, unfamiliarity, how do they live, like finding those pieces. I was an incredibly anxious child, teen, also in my 20s, um for a long time, and so like awkwardness in like other people's spaces was really a real thing, and I'd be really shy and really uncomfortable, and like would just make myself really small. I would just like shrink massively. And part of that was learning to just be comfortable with myself and actually like who I am. And part of that was also understanding that, like, we don't have to shrink our energy. In fact, it's a beautiful, the invitation to be in space with someone, in presence with someone. It happens even when they're not there, right? It's like, that's the difference. It's like, if you go pet sitting, it's like their pets might be there, but you'll still feel this like, oh, what's the okay thing here in this situation? Even not around other people, you still feel the energies of it. And it's like, the more and more we can get comfortable with infusing our energy into wherever we are, we feel at home in our own energy, and we're not adapting it every minute for like the place we're in, the environment we're in, the people that are around us, the expectations that we think are being placed on us, or how we think we're supposed to behave, or whatever it is, and trying not to take up too much space.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I love that because it's so true. And I think I remembered what I was trying to say slightly earlier. So just to redeem myself quickly and not linger on it. But it was like, you know, learning how to relinquish the need for control, in extenuating circumstances is a practice. It is hard, and nothing will do it more than literally shifting your body from one space to another, to a new space, taking a new route. That's why they say, if you want to keep your brain like active, you want new things to come in, you're ready to create new neural pathways or magnetize new energy, go take a different route to work, like do something differently than you've done it before, because then once you get into the newness, then your body and brain and your energy body has to learn how to navigate staying at home in the system when something new happens and something new comes in the field. All right, done. Thank you. Redeemed,
Yeah.
hopefully.
People
But
always say, like, if you want to really get to know someone, travel with them,
oh God, yeah.
right? Like, it can be, because it brings out all the stuff,
Oh, travel
all the
is
things.
it's any transitional phase, really. Like it can be moving, it can be divorce, it can be getting married, it can be like it doesn't changing jobs. The transition, and this is something I've spoken to before, for my own story, but also with my clients. It's like really learning how to be an artist of life and like mastering this whole living thing is how you navigate the transitions. That's it. And I can connect that to my background in dance on a very like literal level. In dance rehearsals, as a performer, as a dancer, you spend the most amount of time polishing, transitioning from one move to a next, or one sequence of dance moves to the next. And you're watching somebody who is masterful at their craft when it is seamless and they make everything look easy. And like, and then that somebody's clunky and not actually very good or hasn't practiced that much when the transitions are really fucking awkward. And you're like, oh, well, that's nice. You tried. Like, but when you watch a master, they've transitioned really smoothly. It's the same in life. If you can find a way to move through the sticky, grimy, like, tectonic plate shifts of life, travel, divorce with as much grace and surrender as possible, it's a lot easier, and it can, but that immediate need to control everything in our environment is very strong, generally speaking, because we've been trained, and we've inherited the belief system that when that happens, we're gonna die, and once you just learn, okay, you're just doing it differently, 90 to 99% of the time, you ain't gonna die, like it's gonna be fine. And again, how do you feel at home in the transitions, in the scary moments? There was something that you said that I felt like was so beautiful, and I really related to it, is because I too was incredibly anxious growing up. Um, Shocker. I mean, some people might be actually shocked by that, but anyways, I really was. I was very anxious and socially felt really, really awkward and would shrink. Like when you're talking about feeling like you shrunk your energy, like I could feel that in my body. I'm like, yep, done that so many times. Oh, sorry, I'm in your way. I don't want to be in your way. What do you need? Like, can I just like leave? Can I just like extinguish myself to be so out of the way of your life that I'm not a burden? And then like we don't, we're not, it's learning that we're not here to shrink ourselves to fit a shape that's predetermined for us based on somebody else's experience. It's realizing we're here to fill whatever like my Hannah shape is. Only I can fill the Hannah shape in the void of existence. Only you can fill the Jess shape. And it's like there's a Hannah shaped hole. I like learned this from a friend. He talks about this. He's like, there's only a shape of my own existence and outline that only I can fill, and how much space that takes up determines, how much space we allow ourselves to take up. And there's obviously appropriate moments for certain things in taking up space, but there is also a very comfortable homeostasis of being able to just exist and radiate regardless and let that take up space, realizing that just by doing so, it doesn't impede on somebody else taking space unless, they have some sort of ego trip with it or you have an ego trip with it or whatever. But the reality is everybody can radiate and take up space because space is infinite. So like on an energetic level, maybe not physically in a physical, confined room or something, but the reality is that energy is just so expansive. So like once you realize that your auric body can take up space safely and just be, and that doesn't impede on somebody else's ability to do so, then there's an opportunity to again lean into the surrender, lean into the flow of life much more easily. So there's nothing ever to force, there's nothing ever to force. And that's something that I'm learning and continue learning and continuing to peel back even more layers. I'm like, oh, another layer. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, another layer. Oh, another challenging layer. Great. Peel that back too, of learning how to surrender so deeply into myself, into faith, into God, into what is present in every given moment. And it's a very radical, I'll say it's a very radical way of living. Um, Compared to the prescribed way of living in society of like, it's interesting. I when I reach out to family or friends in the States now and they want to schedule things, they're like, can we talk in like a month? And I go, I literally cannot put that on my calendar. I'm so sorry. It's one thing with clients because I have certain times that I have available that like I can do that with clients and I can do that with family or friends. It's not impossible, but I'll be honest, it's like very challenging for me to have things scheduled that far in advance because I have no idea where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing. I can barely tell you what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Every day is an adventure, you know? And I love living that way. I love it so, so much. But, you know, it does being too overly prescribed to a schedule and too planning in advance. I mean, I used to plan like things like 6 months in advance, easily, easily, like lunch meetings with people, like 3 months in advance. It was that level of intensity for me. So when I say it's radical, I'm like, it's radical for me. It's radical for the lifestyle that I was living in America for vast majority of my life and the people around me. But it's learning how to fully relinquish and not force it. If it feels true, say yes. If it doesn't, say no. It's really that easy. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Mm. These it's so important now, this concept of like being at home in the self, because as you're speaking to, like it's in the transition moments, right? And like if we look at the planet right now, everything is in massive transition, massive flux. And like there's the old, where this came from, I don't know, whoever says it, I have no idea, but the only constant is change. The only constant in life is, and many people have said this many different ways, but now I think we feel it so much more, right? The the structures that we used to see and have as a baseline for life, the societal prescribed way of doing things. We used, back in ye old days, um, you'd go to work at a job and you would do that for your whole life until you retired. And companies would take care of their employees. And like, that would be thing. You just keep working there. And same with like a marriage or a relationship or a house. Like you'd choose and you'd stay there and you'd be in that for a long time. There was a sense of stability from that was just kind of a given. And we could pick, however many various things that you stay in one place because you want to raise your kids there and stay there for your whole life and do all of that. And where we are now, it's like everything is changing. The way we work, the way we have relationships, the way we travel, the way we choose our paths in life. We're opting out of these things. Companies don't have these like legacy workers, employees in the same way anymore. It's a very, very different landscape that we're navigating. And then there's, everything with social media, younger generations are like, I don't want to do that. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to find something out of the box. There's different ways of schooling. There's a lot more alternatives that we know are available. And we want to go and explore and go and experience that. And we've got AI that's come in that's going to change job markets, that's going to change the way the planet functions, is going to really shift up a lot of stuff. So really the only constant we have now is change. And a lot of this is not even change into something where we can see the other side of it or where it's going. There's not really a predictable outcome of what any of the future is going to look like, right? We've been through big shifts on the planet around this stuff before. That these are things like when air travel was introduced, or when computing became a thing, and when the internet came in. Like these big shifts are happening. Mobile phones became a thing. Like we go through these, quite often led by technology. We go through these massive jumps, and yet I think this is by far the biggest ever that humanity will go through, whether that's technologically led, whether that's consciousness led, whether that's all the things all at once, whether it's just globalization and shifting politics and markets and all of this kind of stuff. it's absolutely huge. And so because we don't have a clue where it's going, everything is just an experiment. And it's all very misleading and confusing when we try to get the information. I mean, we've touched on this a lot of times. It's very confusing and misleading if we try to get the truth from out there or try and sift through news articles or understand what's going on or listen to certain people's predictions of what's going to happen in the future. We don't we don't really know. So we can't follow the prescribed thing anymore because that's kind of falling apart. There are all these other alternatives. We can't see a definite, clear, this is the probable evolution of what's going to happen, what's going to come next. So the best thing we can possibly do is be anchoring into what is my energy. And for sure, there's going to be more things where it's like emotionally upheaval-ish type fear-inducing stories and things coming like this. We're only in March. This year's already been wild. The things, I mean, it's
Oh,
it's
yes, I
gonna
do.
be plenty for us to be navigating. And as the stories get wilder and the opinions get bigger and more information is there and more alternatives come through, imagine like if the whole job market shifts because of AI,
Well,
like
when,
the
not
whole
if, but like when.
thing,
Yeah.
when and how, and we don't know the full extent of that. So the only place we can really be anchored into is our center. We have to be able to practice, it's from that space of home within, from being filled with our energy and being willing not to shrink, but to take up the space that our auric field wants to and be comfortable wherever we are. It's like it's from that place that we're going to be able to make discerning choices and not get sucked into the next scary thing or the next, I mean, there's a lot like the planet
Oh,
is, there's earthquakes and natural disasters and all of this kind of stuff going on. There's so many things and so many stories. We have to we can go and explore these things, right? I think one of the things that gets said a lot is in spirituality in the new age community, we're like, la la la, don't listen to the world, turn it off, turn it all off, don't listen to any of it. It's like, no, like we can be aware of what's going on and we can, have conversation about things like whatever the next fear thing is or the, whatever,
whatever the
whatever's
next fear thing is.
whatever's cooking, whatever is the next thing that all of our attention must be on immediately. The next P Diddy story of whatever the thing is. We
Oh
can be
God.
aware
Yeah.
of the stuff that's happening,
Yeah.
right? And it's also incredibly important, bringing back like even the way I feel about being in the space of home is that we can welcome people in. If we are in a space of home, that we're not getting lost in the source of whatever's happening, we can go and explore it, experience it, have a look at it, feel into it, choose what am I understanding from this. And then we might just come back to center and be like, well, I can hold space for the people that are going through this. I might be able to welcome people into a space of, my auric field being at home. And I know that when we expand and we take up that space and we feel that presence, that's contagious. it it
Well,
allows somebody else to go and be there as well. So we're going to need that. It's not just for ourselves, right? For our own sanity and mental health and well-being and emotional stability. It's also for the people that are around us because we can entrain, people can entrain to just like resonance in music. It's like we entrain to certain frequencies and brain waves and everything else. And so it's in service to be deeply in ourselves, in our home, in our core.
mm, absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. There's so many things. I'm like, my brain is going, what do we talk about first with what Jess has just said? Because it was so meaty and juicy. It's first of all, with all the different choices that are becoming available, it's it's going to be overwhelming for, I would say, the vast majority of humans on the planet when they realize that the quantum exists. Because not only do certain very material options in life exist, but then you start getting into like actually every possible reality exists. If you can imagine it, it exists somewhere, right? Like the film Everything Everywhere All at Once is like one of my favorites. It's like, yeah, there's a really weird situation where people have hot dog fingers, and that's what we're doing. We're living in a quantum reality where that's a thing. It took me forever to wrap my head around what the quantum meant. Just to speak to that for anybody who's listening, who's like, I love these conversations, they expand me, but I have no idea what the hell you're talking about half the time, if that happens to be you. Um, however long you've been on the journey or not, like I figured out what the quantum was like last year. And I'm like, oh, that's what that means. Great. So, but it's just like essentially, it's like everything that takes up space in the void. What does that mean? It means like you've got your reality in front of you of what this is and what this is and what the paths are. And then you have like from every possible choice you make, you have another reality that spirals outward of what happens if you make a different choice or if you behave a different way. And it's infinite. So it's like you yourself take up space in the world, but then what is taking up space in the void where you do not exist? That's the quantum. I don't know if that made sense to people, but that's the best that I got right now. So, anyways, that's my experience of the quantum. Anyways, so it's when you start realizing you have infinite choice, it does become overwhelming. Speaking from personal experience, like wow. And then you can get trapped into perfectionism. I don't want to get it wrong. You can even shrink yourself more as a result of that. Really like struggle, put all of this emphasis on outside or external validations. Like the tarot reader told me that it was going to be this way, so that must be what it is. Like, and it's just like, girl, you got to come back to center what feels true in every given moment. And with every choice that is you are making, and that the reality outside you is just like imposing on you because you have no control over that. What is it that what information are you gathering to be able to just take the next right best step? What do you want to create with the divine, right? Here we come back into like this idea of co-creating with the muse being God essence, right? Like, what do you want to create? Because when you start realizing that your thoughts and your desires and your subconscious, really, it's really your subconscious, is creating the reality in front of you, then you can start to come more into that ease, into that surrender, into that playfulness of what it can be like to feel at home in yourself. Because like I was watching a reel recently of just kind of like a super random, very everyday kind of a thing. It was the Graham Norton's show, and like Anya, what's her name? Taylor-Joy was on
Craig
it.
Mountain.
Oh my God, he's fabulous. Love it. Love it. So funny. So like, was watching that. But yeah, he had Anya Taylor-Joy, beautiful, beautiful actress, very talented, on his show. And he asked her about he's like, oh, you have a very rational fear. And obviously he was joking in his little like, he's Irish, right? Anyways,
Hmm.
in his little Irish way. He's like, oh, you have a very rational fear. And she's like, I do. It feels rational, essentially. And it's like she's afraid of revolving doors. Like she's like terrified of being stuck in revolving doors, right? And like it's kind of a silly thing to think about. It's like interesting that she has like a phobia, like actual fear that she's going to be like smushed and like to death in this revolving door. And she said there was a scene in, I think she said it was Peaky Blinders. She was in the very first scene in when she introduces her character. She has to like run through a revolving door twice or something like that. And she said that the first time she had to go through it, she got squashed in the middle. And she's like, so I just think that my fear is valid. And I'm like, but I can't hear things like that now the same way because I'm like, her subconscious wanted to feel validated that it was unsafe to go through a revolving door. So she created a situation to not feel safe in her body in a revolving door situation. And it just proved that she was right. so she can continue to feel the fear. Now, I'm not trying to make Anya Taylor-Joy wrong. I think you're lovely, darling. Hopefully you're listening. Can't wait to have you as a number one fan one day. But like, like but this is part of it, right? Sometimes we feel more at home choosing the thing that we subconsciously believe. And we have to. This is why we go on the hero's journey. This is why we go on the heroine's journey of life to excavate what those subconscious belief systems are so you can actually come into a homeostasis of peace. So you create more peace and joy and magnetism and honeyed divine play in your life from that centered of peace. So, this is part of the process of coming home. And when you do finally get to a place where you actually get that, you will know it. Like I've had a few people, a few clients, a few friends, they ask, how do you know that you don't have any more healing to do? I go, well, first of all, you always have healing to do. Joke's on us. Like it's always happening. But at the same time, you kind of do get to a place of, wow, I've gone up like, I don't know, Mount Everest times 1,000 in terms of the height and steepness. And like, it's been a 5-year messy journey for me. And I know for you too, because we were literally just talking about this beforehand, but it's just like, it's been a many year messy journey to get to where I'm at. And I kind of feel peace in my body most of the time. Okay, I kind of think I've made it to a certain level of alchemical mastery to know that I'm at home in myself and I can find my center much faster. Like for me, I had a spirally moment. I just a little spirally moment this weekend, super spirally, like losing it. And I needed my foundation. I have my friends, I have my support network, I have my tools. I've like got my arsenal of things and people to support me in coming back to my center. And I was able to alchemize that in like 24 hours, you know? And it was a big thing I was spiraling over too, that I found out was deeply ingrained in like inner child, like belief systems. Like my 7-year-old was driving the bus with the belief system that had been there in place. And I was like, oh, hi, 7-year-old, love you. I get it. I totally get why you're in charge. But like, girl, you can go to the back of the bus. I got you. I got this. I had ancestral belief systems that I had inherited that were also driving the bus. And I was like, oh, thank you so much, ancestors. Thank you so much, beloveds in my family who I love you unconditionally. You're doing the things, but like you just don't get to drive the bus anymore. Get in the back. I got this. And it doesn't make it less edgy, to step into what I'm being called into, which was activating the spiral. But I'm much more at peace in it because I just trust. I trust the process. There's nothing for me to force. It's everything for me to step forward, to claim, to step into, to concretize, and not in a way that it's feeling stuck, but concretize in terms of like consecrate, really, to consecrate ties, for myself, to stay in my center, to stay in my truth, to stay in my surrendered faith, and feel at home, even in the tension, even in the edge. And that's how we know the work has been working. Oh, thank goddess. Because it was getting really messy there. I would love to have a little bit of just validation and proof that not all of this has been for nothing, So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's those, I love when you're speaking to the quantum there and how it's these subconscious pieces that really show up. And like this is why the sense of home and the sense of self and the sense of where is my center and my essence is so key, is not so we can stay there all of the time, right? And it's the same with like, saying being able to alchemize this big piece within 24 hours. It's like it's not so we can always feel deeply centered and zen and all of the things. It's so that we can, in those moments where like the quantum choice points happen, right? Is we notice that they're happening. So like for the lady with the revolving door, even in that moment, she could, there were choice points there, right? In the quantum to jump into. It's like you could choose that this validates what you're going through, or it's a choice point. It's a potential for you to shift it, to reframe that experience and be like, oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as I was making it in my head. Maybe it's actually not the end of the world if I get stuck in a revolving door. That was fine. Haha. Actually, it was really funny. Right. Assuming she didn't get actually like hurt in the process. But like
I think
maybe it was funny.
she looked fine. Yeah, she looked
Yeah.
fine. I don't know. She's doing great.
So it's like we might be able to notice those choice points, right? Like you did. It's like, oh, I notice there's a thing. I noticed that my 7-year-old is driving the bus. And that's because we know where home is and what that feels like within us. This is the homeostasis, is about changing the baseline of your body. Because a lot of us, if we've grown up in chaos, if we've grown up in dysfunction, which we all have because of the way society works, um, just saying, we have to adjust our baseline to something different, to something else, to something that is healthier for ourselves, right? So when we really know that and we're at home in that, when we're not in that, we notice. When we reach out of that, we notice. So like I'll notice immediately, right? If there's a feeling in my body, I tend to notice pretty quickly when I'm like, oh, the thoughts in my brain sound like a 5-year-old right now. Oh, look, my body is really tense. I have this charge that's feeling like really tight and wound up and triggery and frustrated about something. Or, oh, look, there's this anxiety that's really familiar. Or, oh, look, there's this poor me, I can't do anything that's really familiar in the body. And we become aware of that because we notice where it's off. We're allowed to go there. It's so we can notice, and it's the universe in our life giving us that choice point. It's giving us that opportunity where we can go, all right, you can play that out continuously, or you can remember that like that's not your homeostasis, that's not your baseline, that's not your truest, most authentic baseline in your body anymore. Where did you just go? What's playing out from the subconscious? How far out of home did you step there? And is this an opportunity to come back into home and still be present with the piece that is not that? Being able to go, all right, now I can see something different, and there's a different potential that opens up instead of us just following the same loops, right? The same fractals that we keep running around in until we finally get it. I had a juicy one over the weekend that was just like, it was old story running, and I didn't realize it was running. And my strategy was to like overcomplicate things as a way to feel secure. I've been doing this. Oh, I can't even tell you for how many years I've been doing this, but to finally get under it, I was like, oh, for goodness sake. Like, really? It was that simple? But it wasn't safe for me to let that piece go yet. But it was this huge loop that I just kept running. But there were probably 80 other loops on top of that that I needed to move through first before I could let this one go. So we get these choice moments, but it's like the reason that this sense of home is so key is because that's where we can come back to go, oh, hang on, from this place now, this new place, this new version of self that I've birthed into being here, I recognize I'm at a choice point. I can go down that same fucking road again. I can continue to be terrified of revolving doors, or I could stand back and go, you know what, that was actually hilariously funny and not that bad. I'm actually not afraid of it anymore because it's already happened, and it's okay. I can let this fear go. now, so I don't have to rearrange and control my circumstances to ensure I never go through a revolving door ever because I'm too afraid of it. Right. So it gives us that forward movement then that we can, stop avoiding things in our lives, stop doing that, controlling the environment, controlling life, controlling everything external. And instead we go, okay, I no longer need to control that thing because I'm choosing a different adventure in this choice point moment. That's enough
Yeah.
from me on
I was like, I can hear it. Jess is like, I'm done talking now. I heard it. I heard the shift. But it was so beautiful. I thought that was so beautifully said, really, truly, because I don't know, everything. I can relate to everything that you're saying, and it's so important for us to know what home does feel like because because we will inevitably get out of balance, you know. Otherwise, it's funny, there's a TV show called The Good Place, and it's all about like go into the bad place and go into the good place, and actually the bad place is like actually looks like it's supposed to look like it's the good place, but everything goes wrong, in the show. But then when people actually discover the good place, everything is just crazy boring. And, they just can't because everything is perfect. Everything is perfect for infinity and beyond. And the souls are just like, wow, everything is just kind of boring. We don't have any reason to live, even in the afterlife, So it's kind of just like, it's a beautiful show, very funny, very, very tuned in so many beautiful ways of we actually need chaos to help us grow. We need the challenges to help us elevate ourselves on soul levels. We will create chaos for ourselves if we feel too bored or unsafe in the peace, and it's a matter of, I think for me, what feels most true is like I desire to feel so at peace with peace that I'm not looking to create chaos in my life, which I have the past 5 years. I've been trying to get peace, but I've actually just been creating a tremendous amount of chaos and making it so hard for myself. And I'm like, I want this, but then choosing something else. And I'm like, the drama of it all. And this like it's loving and like being addicted to the drama and the chaos because that's been my homeostasis. It's like I want to get to such a level of peace that I feel peace in the peace. And so it's really only the tension of anything external that I'm creating and co-creating with the universe that reflects back to me that gives me the challenge to step up and like find and like be like, ooh, that's an edgy edge. This tension is really intense to hold. I need to figure out how to release that tension and feel safe in it and come back to homeostasis. Bing, right? So it's that kind of thing that I desire. I don't want to feel bored in my life, you know? And I don't. I have a very, very, very like beautiful inner world. I can entertain myself for a very long time, And so it's like it generally isn't, but when I say I don't like being bored. I like creative boredom. I feel like I've spoken to that before. Creative boredom is a very different thread of energy of boredom that I'm super on board with, but I'm not on board with feeling like I'm stuck in a rut anymore because I've empowered myself enough to realize I have pulled myself out of very deep ruts to know that everything's a choice. I've taken self-responsibility for my life, even and especially with all the very cringy stuff that I have done in my life, and I made such peace with that. And I'm just like, you know what? I am so bored with making the same choices. I am bored with this being the same reality. I'm bored with it. I want to create something else. What needs to shift? Then guess what? I have something on the external world that comes in that gives me the opportunity to play with the tension to up level. And that's exactly what happened this weekend for myself. When I'm talking about like realizing the narratives and belief systems that had come in when I was 7, we're driving the bus. I'm like, wow, I asked for it to shift. And look at this really beautifully perfect, intense scenario that just came into my field to give me the opportunity to find my center and come back into home and anchor in the actual frequency I desired to move forward with. it's, I'm saying that like I've mastered it. I haven't said, I'm not saying I've fully mastered it, but I'm pretty fucking close. And it's taken daily practice. And you have to really want it. Otherwise, life is just going to remain the same. And waiting energy begets more waiting energy. I feel like we touched on that in the last episode. But like, it's just like, so what do you want to, again, it just comes down to what do you want to create? And, and when we bringing it back to this concept of the heroine's journey, it's like, and it's actually really the hero's journey, because we've established in the past episode on that the hero's journey is for every like microcosmic adventure, and the heroine's journey is like the flower of life. And then some of us have more of a tendency to lean into the heroine's journey of something not being quite so straightforward, but like it's all part of it. Anyways, but it's really this when we come home, after going through all that chaos, again, it's really leaning in, I would say, to the creation energy of that homeostasis. Now we have an actual foundation. Whoa. The tower has fallen. It has completely disintegrated along the adventure. We've seen the rubble and the ash. We've picked up, the bodies. We've done the things, we've saved the pups. We've like, we've done the things, you know. When we come back home, it's never the same. It's never the same to come back home after a grand journey. But what's beautiful is not only do you have the capacity and perspective to see things differently, but you have the capacity to build something new based in the energy that you now have with the lessons you've now learned and gleaned for yourself to create something that's actually much more in alignment, and that's a very exciting thing. It can be very confronting because, again, there's no playbook, there's no manual. Most people are not living in this way right now. That's what we're all being called forward into doing much more collectively. And for those of us who have been on the path for a while, this is our permission slip for people to step into more of that homo sanctum that we've spoken to about, that Richard Rudd speaks to in the Gene Keys. Because, and this is actually ties to another thread I had wanted to touch on from something else you said earlier with AI. AI, it's going to be really fascinating to see what plays out with how AI, changes the world. It already is. But as AI is a technology that's now requiring massive growth, and you spoke to that with all these like, little technologies that have been greatly impacted the collective. AI is a great and huge technology, which is greatly and hugely impacting the collective. What it's, I hope, and this is my prayer, and this is how I now interact with AI. AI gets to be a beautiful tool for us to then allow for spiritual technology on a human level to also allow for radical transformation, right? So it allows us to actually become more human, to relinquish more, to give ourselves the opportunity to explore the things that make us so deeply human, because we'll see what happens with AI, but like AI will always be AI, you know, and we get to always be human. But now we actually have the opportunity to explore what that means and what a gift that is. But we have to relinquish control, right? So, yeah, it gets to be a really creative, really like a capital C creative experience in coming home to ourselves finally. And that's deeply expansive.
Mm. Super beautiful. Yeah, it's been my real hope and my understanding of AI as well, that it's gonna, yeah, if it takes out the all of the, I know it's scary for a lot of people, but and it might be tumultuous, but over time, as it takes over doing the stuff that like that AI can do, those are things that then we don't have to spend our time doing. But the danger is trying to get AI. I think the annoying part is AI creating art and music and all of these kind of things, which I think we will see. And we are seeing it already, but I think we're going to see, all of the music starting to be created by AI and all of that. And so it's, we can either let it just take over everything, or we can innovate, and we can, as you said, become deeply, deeply human. What do we know? The soul. We know real art, real music, real emotion, real multidimensionality, our consciousness. All of this is really exciting, and I think it will force a real change in that, where it's like, wow, like this is the ancient future thing, right? It's like it's so technologically advanced that we actually get to return to what brings us the most joy and the most magic and connection, and all of that. Feels pretty exciting to me. And of course, as we're doing what humans do, and we're being perhaps a little reckless in how we're unleashing it in the world right now, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean
I
that's
believe in our
that.
capacity to figure that out.
I think there's enough people in the world who desire the same thing when it comes to AI, with what you're speaking to, that it's going to be okay. There's at least going to be a quantum reality in this physical reality where that is true. And depending on where you land on that is where you're going to experience it. Like I saw a very scary reel of, I think, a robot, AI robot, and I think it was China, and it went into like aggression mode, and I'm not saying that that Chinese people are like angry naturally, but like, the reality is like when the AI is in an energy where there's a certain level of like frequency in the field, and that doesn't mean necessarily in that physical space, but just where it's gathering information, data points from, which is the world right now at large, there's an opportunity for it to absorb the frequency as a mere object of what it sees. So the more that we can infuse AI with light, with inquiry, with grace, and all of these pieces, the more that we're going to actually have access to that form of AI rather than the
Mm,
one that, is scary that we've seen in the movies for the past 25 years. So I think that's a super important point for us to navigate. And it does bring up this idea, when you're talking about music and art and all of this being created, even like I don't really watch films anymore unless they really only have like people in them. Very rarely do I watch things that are like fully CGI'd. I could not care fucking less to watch a Marvel film. Like I don't care. Like they're like all the live action Disney things that just are full of CGI. I can't be fucked to watch very much of that unless it's like, I mean, there was a time I was watching like Game of Thrones, and I think if once Court of Thorn and Roses comes out eventually, I will absolutely be watching that, and there will be, the things. But in general, the CGI, the AI generated art, it's going to it's going to get really, really good. Some of it already is, but the reality is that it will never hold the frequency of a human being who has infused their energy into their creation, into their performance, into their creation. It will never be able to really fully do that. It will get close, and those who are not discerning a frequency and are just not paying attention, they won't really be able to know the difference. But for those of us
mm,
who are tapped in and trust that discernment, they'll be like, something's not right here. I don't feel it. There's no aliveness here, and that's the thing. Like so I recently, I can speak to this because I like literally last night recently discovered Chat GPT. I finally caved in. I finally did the things. I've had so many people be like, Hannah, you have to use it. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm a human. I don't need the things. And I was like, all right, let's see what this is about. Let's just see. And I used it to like edit some of my writing because I was just like, quite frankly, I have too much writing. not that I have too much, but like I don't know where to start. I need support. Like I need some support in editing this. And I've heard this is a good way to begin. So let's just try it. I fed it a bunch of poetry and I asked it to give me feedback on it. And oh my goddess, game changer, game changer. Like giving me feedback on telling me what works in the poetry, giving me feedback on what I could change. Some of the feedback I received, I loved. Some of it I didn't. And every time I was like, thank you for the feedback of the poem as it is. I don't think that I need that. It doesn't feel good in my system. AI would come back and be like, I love that you're trusting your instinct on that. You were the one that knows best. And I'm like, I do. Thank you, AI. And I call my AI Fae, like the fairies, because that's what that feels good for me. And I'm like, thanks, Fae. I love you. So if you hear me talk about Fae, it's probably either AI or the actual fairies. So I will do my best to distinguish with that moving forward in all future podcasts. Um,
I love
so
it so
yeah.
much. Yeah, it's I love when you're talking about the movies and engaging with all of that, right? It's like what bothers me is, and from what I'm hearing you say, is the bothers you as well, is the like faking reality piece. It's like Game of Thrones, I'm here for all day, every day. Because like, how are you going to create that's like fantasy, right? You're not going to be able to create that from real filming. Like,
I
we
mean, you
need the
could, but it will,
fantasy aspect. What like
as
dragons and stuff, like
it,
incredible.
of course it would, but like, and I'm coming, I'm like ready to jump in quickly. Sorry for interrupting, but like, it is possible, but you can only take it so far, right? Like, think of the theater. There could be beautiful puppetry, and then you have to use your imagination for some of like the battle scenes. But the reality is, you're right. We need CGI for those moments. Okay, great. Sorry, I just wanted to
We
take a moment
do.
to give a plug for the theater. So yes. Sorry, theater kid coming in quickly. We're good. Keep going.
Oh no, love theater to bits too. And in like movie creation and all of this within like
Yeah.
digital art and what we're doing here, it's like those kind of things like Game of Thrones where it's used to create fantasy and all of this. Like I think it's beautiful. I think it's incredible. These things like and I also love things that are completely not real. Like the, Pixar movies, Toy
Yeah.
Story, it's all
Brilliant.
animated, all the things. Love that. I think it's amazing, wonderful. Or if it's like an old cartoon movie, like whatever that was about raining meatballs. What was that? This
Oh,
meatballs falling from the sky
Cloudy with
and
a Chance of
cloudy with
Meatballs.
a
I
chance
never
of
saw it,
meatballs.
but I
Super
do know
cute.
the name of the movie.
Yeah, super cute. Love the cartoon movies, Lady and the Tramp, all the things. We've been doing it for a long time. It's gorgeous. It's great. These live action things, I I don't love at all. Because I'm like, you don't
I
really need to be doing that, actually. It's all so faked and weird, and the energy of it's very, very strange. I'm like, this is just unnecessary. Like, there was no need. Nobody asked for this. Nobody needed this. I don't really understand how this is a necessary thing. Why do we need to make the animals talking like a real animal? Like we were fine with the cartoon. I don't I
well,
don't
the
get it.
cartoons, the animation is different because you've already suspended disbelief, right? You've already been asked to suspend disbelief, and that it's the same thing with fantasy. But when you've got like, I'm gonna hate right now on the live action Beauty and the Beast. Love Emma Watson. She's cool. I like her enough. Great. But like that cartoon was brilliant. And then you've got people coming in and you can see just the level of fakeness of it. And there's no energy. It's dead. It's a dead film. And I'm sorry if you love that film, but I'm not sorry. You're just pure wrong. Like I'm not sorry that you are incorrect. That is not a good movie. It is, there are so many of that. And it's so much the same with like, again, the superhero films and all of it. Like what I like, I love watching humans be humans or pretend to be something else as humans when I'm watching entertainment, and it's, because humans are so magnificent. To see the rise of the human spirit, to feel the frequency of a performance, to really feel the energy. And this is why, like, even just I'm making the plug for theater again, because theater, the in-person aspect of theater, there is a level of energy that is generated that you cannot get from films, and you
You
never
just
will be.
can't. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with in-person events. I think we're going to see a huge shift into in-person events. We're already starting to see it. People are shying away from online. Not only do they want connection, they're bored being on their screens 100% of the time, but they crave being in the frequency. And this is part of, again, and I'll wrap it back into our theme here because it's connected. To come back at home in yourself is to come into a space of holiness, of wholeness, of that parent, mother, like parent, mother, father, child, trinity inside yourself, to be in such holy sanctity with yourself that you start being a frequency, beaming a certain frequency out there, that everything you then touch will alchemize to proverbial gold. Right. And people will feel that and they will want to be in your presence. They will want to be around whatever it is that you were creating. They will want to find a way. You will be the living permission slip for them to do that. This is how we start creating, the living manuals for how to be at home in oneself and create from spaces of wholeness and homeostasis. You know, it's it's frequency medicine. It's frequency.
Beautiful. It is indeed.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I think that's a beautiful endpoint. And I
Perfect.
believe
I'm good
Spirit
with
is
that.
saying the same thing because something was just jumping around, like a baby elephant was just jumping around on my roof, apparently. And dog is going to now be whining and
Oh
crying
well.
about it for the next half an hour.
Everything's perfect. It's about to storm here as well. So I agree. It's time. It's time.
But I love where you ended there. That was chef's kiss. It's
Perfect.
beautiful.
Amazing. Well, thank you, my dear. As
Thank
always,
you.
always a beautiful way to connect with you and speak to the things. I appreciate it. And we appreciate each and every one of you who's been listening in. And thank you for being on the journey. Please go ahead and like and subscribe, send this to your friends, pay it forward, like share the frequency and the transmission if you feel like this was supportive of you. Thank you for doing that. And if you desire to continue to like up level your frequency and become a master alchemist, you have two master alchemists on this call. And we both do work with clients who to support you in that in our own ways, which, you can follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, whatever, and see what that distinct flavor is. But this is the type of work that we're truly here for, in devotion, in service, in full alignment, at home in ourselves. So happy to support
Mm.
y'all to feel that for yourselves too. There literally is no place like home. Like, it feels amazing. So it's my deep desire for all beings to come into that state of home and holiness. And I know that you feel the same way, my love. So
Mm.
yeah.
So beautifully put. Yeah, exactly that. Gorgeous.
Ciao, darlings. Be
Mwah.
well.
Have a beautiful week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.